Gang, so this is the last stage of the cutting board process. So I have 3 different products here that I can apply to finish my cutting board. The whole purpose of applying a finish is to do 2 things. Number 1, to prevent the wood from drying out and potentially cracking and becoming brittle, but also to keep any water that has bacteria or any other harmful contaminants from soaking into the cutting board and giving you a bad case of food poisoning. So I have some olive oil, just your standard olive oil that you use for cooking. I have mineral oil. Mineral oil is something that has been used historically as a laxative, so not everybody might be comfortable with that. And I have some wood wax. Now the wood wax I find to be an excellent product if you're going to use if you're going to glue pieces together, and I have had students glue pieces to make their cutting board, and then when applying oil it seems to have prevented the glue from forming a really decent bond. So if you're gluing pieces, I'd recommend going with the wood wax. Otherwise, any of these products will work fine. Now I'm going to go ahead and apply a layer on about half of my cutting board so you can see the difference that it makes, and we'll discuss more when that's done. So I went ahead and applied oil I went with the mineral oil, and I applied it to about half of my cutting board, and you can see it does make some differences in how it looks. It darkens the wood slightly. It really enhances and makes the wood grain stick out and become a real feature. And it, of course, is kind of shiny. And one thing you will notice if you did a poor job of filing your edges, those edges and those imperfections do really show up once you apply your finish. You can see though, I've probably got a little bit of excess oil on the surface. For the mineral oil, that's probably not a big deal, but if I went with the olive oil and I used too much and it was just allowed to sit on the surface, olive oil can spoil, and that would mean that your food that you were cutting might get like a bad taste or potentially even some sort of food poisoning risk. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and finish applying my oil, and then I'm just using a regular paper towel to do so. So this is the one I use to apply, and then I'm going to use a second paper towel to buff off the excess. So I'll be back when I've done that. Okay, so my cutting board is oiled. Now in class, for students, I would recommend that you apply the oil and buff 3 times to make sure that the oil has sufficiently soaked into the wood, protecting you and anybody who is going to use it from food poisoning and anything else. Now, one thing that I do want to mention is Mr. Wheeler, the tech ed teacher before me, cautioned me that you can't store oily oily materials with other combustible trash. He told me a story, and I don't know if I believe it or not. Sorry, Mr. Wheeler, if you're watching this, I mean no disrespect. But he told me a story of a wood shop that actually burned down twice because they were carelessly storing their oily trash, and it would catch fire and burn down the building. So don't know if it's true or not, but just to be safe, I always ask my students to store their oily trash in a can, which then I can put some water in, soak it up, so it is completely safe from burning down Newfound Regional High School. So that's that. Now, one other thing, you'll notice that I moved this to a paper towel instead of a newspaper, just because the oil sometimes will dissolve the ink in the newspaper, and that will get on your cutting board and not look as good as it could. So that is the cutting board. The next videos will be about building your box. Those will unfortunately have to be a little bit longer, but I promise to try to limit the length of those videos as I've done for these. Thanks for watching. Go ahead and fill out the worksheet that I attached to this assignment, and have a great day.